Well, Alabama finally looked like Alabama against Missouri. I don't know if they've got everything sorted out.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, whatever those may be. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's happening with Utah? I have many thoughts about what should happen next. And can Washington State make their way into the college football play? I mean, I don't know. Crazier things have happened. Probably not. I'm not going to give Cougar fans the answer they want later in today's show. But I don't know if that's going to happen with Alabama fans either. That's Luke Robinson, Locked On Alabama, joining me here on the show. He was so eager to answer this question of, is Alabama back? He pulled over to the side of the road and said, let's just do it right now. So Luke, let's go right there. Alabama rolls Missouri. And the reason I'm kind of hesitant to say, oh, Alabama fixed it, they're back, is I think Missouri stinks. And without Brady Cook, they stink even worse.
I don't know if Missouri stinks with Cook. Without Cook, it's not good. Okay, that's fair. And look, I'm not here to say all of Alabama's ills are cured. There's still some issues here. There's no doubt about it. And there were still some even issues in this game. If you followed my Twitter account at all, you know I was highly unimpressed and at the 13-0 halftime lead. If Malachi Moore doesn't get an interception, it's probably 6-0 or 6-3 heading to the halftime. And frankly, Alabama should have been better than that. But you know, in the second half, things changed. It's almost a reverse of Georgia, where in the first half Alabama played awesome, and in the second half Alabama not so great. Well, in this game, it was the reverse. It was Alabama didn't play so great. In the second half, they looked really, really good. And I don't know if it's getting back to their roots, getting back to the running game. I really don't know what it was. I don't know if it's targeting Jeremy Bernard more, who had a wonderful contest. But there were a lot of things to be happy about. And frankly, the only thing anybody could really be upset about, I think, at the end of the game was the overall terribleness of SEC officials. And I'm going to tell you something. The NCAA or college football or SEC or somebody's got to do something, because the officiating has been bad all the way around, and they've got to do something to clean that up.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing that everyone in college football can agree on. There's disagreement about realignment, disagreement about rankings, disagreement about who's good, who's not. I think everyone agrees this officiating thing is a problem every week. I don't know that there's a quick and easy fix. We can continue to keep our fingers crossed and pray that they find a solution, but I'm not overly optimistic on that front. But
let me add this really quickly, though.
Yeah.
This is not about missing a holding call or making a holding call when there wasn't a hold. This is about, I'm talking specifically about the instance where LT Overton continues to play because nobody could hear a whistle because the crowd was going nuts, and the play continued, but the officials didn't come in and wave their hand and stop the play, and then they call unsportsmanlike conduct or unnecessary roughness against LT Overton when he had no idea a whistle was blown. Everybody was still engaged. I thought that was just atrocious. Then the call on Kendrick Law when he was trying to block somebody from getting into what they thought was a fumbled punt, and it turns out it may have touched a Missouri player. I just think these officials have been so bad, and I don't know what we can do about it, but something has to change.
I think more than anything, college football fans have to just accept that it's not going to be good. And that's not the answer anybody wants to hear, but I guarantee you the officials want to get it right. They're trying to get it right. They are just not succeeding on that front every week or as consistently as we would like them to. But Alabama finally found some consistency with the running attack, Luke. And that was a really encouraging thing because you got a couple of dynamic running backs back there. You have a quarterback who you involve in the running game as well. This was the most encouraging thing. And the number one aspect of this game against Missouri that made me think, maybe Alabama is going to figure themselves out. They've got a bye this week. They go at LSU next week in a playoff elimination game. In all likelihood, they're in Baton Rouge. But at the very least, you'd like to see Alabama have a little bit more balance so Jalen Milroe doesn't feel like he needs to play hero ball. This was the best game I have seen Alabama with a ground attack this year.
Yeah, I think everybody has been wanting to see Jalen Milroe run more, right? But it dawned on me, maybe he doesn't need to run more on designed runs. I think he's at his best when he breaks loose from the pocket. I mean, you think about that big run he had at Arkansas a couple years ago that really burst him onto the college football scene. You think about some of the runs he had against LSU last year. Those weren't necessarily designed runs. Those were runs where some things break down and he takes off. That's so much harder to defend. He had his best run for 30-something yards against Missouri when it was a pass play and things broke down and he took off. And that's where he's dynamic. I still don't know that the running game is fixed, even though Jam and Justice both had fantastic games and both had their moments. Justice with one of the plays of the year, just barreling over a Missouri defender, low man wins. And but the problem is, I hadn't seen it enough where I'm here to say, oh yeah, Alabama's running game is fixed. I'm not sure that's the case either, but I think we took a step forward. You know, here's the thing. Everybody wants to say, well, Alabama, are they back to Alabama dominance? Not necessarily, but it's okay to say they took a big step towards getting where they want to be. And you're going into a huge stretch. And Kalen DeBoer, coming off bye weeks, is very, very good. I mean, it's the same team that had a bye week before Georgia and looked dominant in the first half. Now, things got sketchy at the end, I know. But if they can have that same kind of repeat performance against LSU, I think they walk out of Baton Rouge with a victory. And I'm going to say this for the 1,000th time. I've been listening to a lot of national stuff today, and they're like, I don't know, Alabama may be eliminated. If Alabama wins out, they'll get in the college football playoff. There's no doubt. Oh,
yeah, that's not – Are people wondering whether that's – I'm not wondering if that's the case. I'm just wondering if Alabama is playing well enough to win those games. 10-2 Alabama is into the college football playoff. And I want to close with this thought, Luke, because we talked about the run game, offense. You know, maybe it's took a step forward, but I'm more encouraged by the defense in the last couple of weeks. They are playing better than they were earlier in the season when they had their struggles in games like Vanderbilt in the second half against Georgia. What have you seen from the Tide on that side of the ball?
Yeah, very happy, much happier with the defense. I think people are getting a little more comfortable. Everybody's settling into their role a little more. You know, one thing I loved, we didn't hear a lot about the cornerbacks because you know why? Nobody was having an issue. You only generally hear about cornerbacks if they make just a wow play or if they're getting beat a lot.
Yep.
So if they're not going to make a wow play, fine. But I don't want to hear about you because you're getting beat a lot. And this time, the Alabama cornerbacks weren't doing that. They were playing pretty well. Malachi Moore had a fabulous game, maybe the best game he's had in a long time. And then Bray Hubbard comes in for Keon Sabb, who was hurt. And Hubbard gets an interception, and he looks like he fits right in. Meanwhile, the pass rush was a lot better. And I think the run stuffing was a lot better. Yeah, Missouri got a nice long drive towards the end of the game, but Alabama put those starters back in to ensure that shutout, and they got it.
Luke Robinson, Locked On Alabama. You check him out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Enjoyed it as always, and I think you're all going to enjoy a discussion about Kyle Whittingham because I have two thoughts, not just one thought about Kyle Whittingham in the Big 12. That is coming up next. Hey, Locked On College Football fans, time to recognize the Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pooled over $20,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to athletes you love, ensuring that all the funds go to the specific player that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going, and you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season, and it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. This week's Roy Player of the Week, Marcel Reed. I mean, a 10-point deficit against a red-hot LSU team at home, and he comes in for Texas A&M, and they win the game by multiple possessions? I mean, are you kidding me? This guy showed some major stones off the bench, shades of Tua Tagovailoa from the national championship back in 2008. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November, which starts later this week. Just download Roy, create an account, enter referral code LOCKEDON, and you're entered. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions, no fees, and be sure to check him out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return_on_you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. Utah is a complete and utter disaster. It's a horrible season. It's not good. It's going poorly. Is it as simple as Cam Rising's injury? That's Drake's Whole Locked On Big 12 to talk about that and more in a loaded lineup of Big 12 games. Again, even though it's not as deep as it often is because there are these things called bye weeks, which I don't know, maybe we should outlaw them just for fun. But is it as simple for Utah this year, Drake, as Cam Rising got hurt and when he did play, he wasn't himself and they didn't have a good option behind him? Or do you think that this is just going to compound the idea that, yeah, Kyle Whittingham should probably hang it up?
So many things here. Number one, bye weeks stink. Iowa State lost its bye week and moved down 2 spots in the AP poll because they had the week off. Another thing, Oklahoma State. Let's give some reprieve to Utah fans. Oklahoma State brought back 20 of 22 starters on a team that won 10 games, and they suck equally bad, if not worse. And then there is Utah, who lost Cam Rising. You think, okay, well, can they win with Isaac Wilson? He was good against Utah State. The answer is no. The answer is very much no. They can't win. They lost to Houston, of all people. Houston, of all people. And let me tell you, the EPA.
That Houston.
When we talk efficiency, this isn't just a Cam Rising thing. Utah's defense, their defense is so good. 69th, nice, against the rush this season. 39th against the pass. That's not the elite Utah defense that we were promised. Oh, but Utah's offense, they can still find a way to get it on the ground, right? Come on. 93rd in the country out of 134 FBS teams running the football, 102nd throwing the football, and 120th on 3rd and 4th down success at a 32.6% clip. That is what we in our industry call bad. That's not one player. That's not one old, very, very old player who's off his parents' insurance and has a house. That is instead something that is structurally wrong with your football team and the reason your offensive coordinator is no longer employed.
The reasons for Kyle Whittingham to retire, I think, just keep stacking up. You've got your head coach in waiting. I just worry, Drake, that about a couple of things. Number one, would he try to get Cam Rising that 8th year of eligibility, and would he go down that path? Because at this point, even if Rising decides to play another season of college football, if you're Utah, you have to cut ties and say, no, we can't do this anymore. We can't put our fans through the same thing. We can't put our players through the exact same questions, the exact same debate. But here's where I also come down on Whittingham, thinking probably time to hang it up. Been there for a very long time. And it's not going well with the backup quarterback. But it shouldn't be this bad. No. I just watched Indiana win a Big Ten game by 14 points with their backup quarterback. That's what good coaching looks like. You can blame Isaac Wilson all you want. Who recruited Isaac Wilson? Kyle Whittingham and this staff. Who's coaching Kyle Whittingham and this staff? I don't expect with a backup quarterback, I'll get to your question in just a moment. I don't expect with a backup quarterback you be able to live up to the preseason conference championship aspirations that Utah very reasonably had coming into this season, but it should still look better than this. I just worry that this could continue to cycle. I don't think the vibe around Utah is any good, and I think this is the time to say, you know what, it's not a pretty ending, but it's the right time to just call it quits. Yes, Drake, go ahead.
Who hosted Locked On Pac-12 last year?
Someone who was a strikingly good-looking individual with incredible podcasting skills.
Name Spencer McLaughlin, ring any bells? Who you would have followed Utah pretty closely then last year? Is that correct? Yeah,
that is indeed correct.
How many competent quarterbacks did Utah have on its roster last season? Healthy, competent quarterbacks, please.
A half. I'll call Bryson Barnes. He went to USC and won. He had some nice games. They were 6-1 and ranked 13th in the country, and then went 2-3, 2-4 actually if you include the bowl game down the stretch. So yeah, it was not good. And you felt they're a quarterback away. They're a quarterback away, and then they change backup quarterbacks. They try to go with the same starting quarterback. Can't keep him healthy, and that's not entirely their fault. But you make a good point that Utah is for the second straight year, getting nothing out of that position.
They also won last year without a full competent quarterback. They still won football games. And then this season, it just compounded into bad, which bad enough to lose to Houston, who's going to be good under Willie Fritz. I do believe that. They're not this season. We all accepted that. Everyone's accepted that. Except
Why
for
did TCU lose to Houston, by the way?
Why two teams that somehow couldn't accept that. So Spencer, for me, it is a matter of, if I am the Utah Utes, if I am that establishment, I have anyone else on roster that can play quarterback who's not Isaac Wilson. He's a true freshman, 3 years. Sure, great. It's your time, baby. Get out there. Right now, you should have someone behind Cam Rising who is, 2-year starter from Northern Arizona who came down, who has legitimate snaps in college football. That's how a lot of schools do it. Utah said, no. If Cam Rising goes down, we're trusting the kid who's our rival's best quarterback's brother. That'll show them, huh? And that last name is maybe the reason Utah is 4-4 right now.
And the Holy Wars next week, I'm told you will be in attendance in Salt Lake City. If ever there was an opportunity for Kyle Whittingham to get me to flip my opinion here, that it's time for him to call it a career, go into the College Football Hall of Fame and say, hey, this was an exceptional run in Salt Lake City. Winning that game would be a turnaround point, because I think if he loses that one, with the preseason expectations that those teams had, I think even Utah fans would have to look at him and say, yeah, this is not working anymore.
Right, and he's a statue coach. They're going to build it at some point, but
they should.
If you end this season 5-7, miss a bowl game, that was your last year as the head coach. Oh, that's really tough. And if you come back next year with Cam Rising and you go 6-6, that's even tougher. At that point, the bad taste in our mouth has multiplied. So that's a decision Kyle Whittingham will have to make. 3 months ago, I would have guaranteed you he would retire after a college football playoff caliber season. They did not have that this year. There will be a real decision at the end of the season that Kyle Whittingham makes. And at this point, it's going to suck either way. If you risk coming back and further tarnishing your reputation, that's tough. But if you if you retire and your last season was this, also not very fun.
It's not, but think about this. Bill Belichick at the end with the Patriots, was it good? No, it was terrible. They stunk. They weren't winning Super Bowls. They weren't even getting to the playoffs at the end. It doesn't always end with Peyton Manning winning the Super Bowl. It just doesn't always finish the way that you would like it to. I think you just have to realize that Utah, they don't even feel like, Drake, they're one season away. Like, if Whittingham were to come back for next year, I don't think he can get them right back to contending for a Big 12 championship. They could be better, but I think they're at least 2 years away from doing that. And I think that's a natural handing off point to say, Morgan Scalley, the keys are yours. We already know that. Start establishing your program and build it however you like.
Yeah, Witt said publicly he won't be there in 2027. He doesn't know how many more years he has left in him. This, again, was probably in his head the last year, the swan song, go out the right way, and he's not going to go out the right way. But you're right. He needs to go out pretty darn soon because it's not working. And this is not an indictment on Kyle Whittingham's coaching career. Nick Saban also admitted he lost at the end. He just couldn't keep up with what college football has become. He didn't like it. Bennett, the same way in basketball at Virginia. Just, hey, at some point.
Tony Bennett and about 5 other legendary coaches in college basketball, Roy Williams and Coach K, come to mind.
Yeah, who are like, hey, I would love to keep coaching, but this isn't what I know of college athletics, and I'm done doing this. It's stupid. I'm not a businessman. I'm a basketball coach or a football coach. It doesn't mean Kyle Whittingham's bad. Nick Saban wasn't bad. They just at some point age out of an era that doesn't include a guy like that.
I completely agree. In 30 seconds or less, what's your favorite game in the Big 12 this week and why?
Oh, I can't wait to watch the old fighting Baylor Bears play the TCU Horned Frogs because I'll be there.
How about this? Revelation of the year. Baylor favored.
In the Battle of Mid. In a mid-off this week in Waco, Texas. Give me the Bears. I think, once again, you're seeing chaos across the Big 12. We've had the most games in the FBS where a score has flipped in the fourth quarter, 17 of those, where a team who was down came back to win. That's crazy, but you still have 4 teams at the top that are very successful. I do like the Baylor-TCU matchup. I think Texas Tech, Iowa State could get interesting, probably won't. It should be a week of blowouts.
Drake Toll, Locked On Big 12. Drake, thanks for the time. As always, wait for the awkward outro. And 3, 2, 1. Yeah, okay. See, there it is. Dead. Yeah, dead silence. So Washington State is 7-1. Washington State is ranked inside the top 25. Can Washington State be a playoff disruptor? That's coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's a pretty simple, it's pretty easy, it's pretty darn good. Plus, everything you want for college football, it's all over there. It's all over there. Do you think Ohio State's beating Penn State this week? FanDuel.com is the place to go. Do you think Penn State is winning? Then FanDuel.com is the place to go. Do you think that there are upsets of brewing? Money lines are available and everything else. It's all over at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Did you know that Washington State is in the top 25? Yeah, number 22 in the country. I think that's plenty deserved. Now, the question that you all should care about is, can they become a playoff chaos team? Can they actually get an at-large bid to college football playoff? Because the Pac-12 is not going to play a conference championship because, well, you only have 2 teams in it right now. Boise State and friends are not going to arrive for a couple of seasons. But the question about Washington State, I'm not going to give the answer that Cougar fans want to hear. If they win the rest of their games, which they should, I mean, they struggled against San Jose State earlier this year. They struggled against San Diego State, who are unbeaten in Mountain West Conference play so far, but I don't think they're a conference title contender in the Mountain West. That's Boise State and everybody else right now. UNLV is good, but anyway, I digress. Washington State does not have the schedule to lock in an at-large college football playoff resume, because if they go 11-1, their lone loss of the season would be at Boise State. Now, the Broncos may very well win the rest of their games. They could wind up 12-1, the Mountain West champs in the college football playoff. That in and of itself wouldn't be a bad loss. Here's the issue. How many people you think actually watched that game and know that it was closer than the 45-24 final score indicated? I know that. You know that. Does the playoff committee know that? Do they remember that? Do they care about that? Perhaps not. So then you're looking at a schedule that has 7 Mountain West opponents and 4 Power 4 opponents on it, and Oregon State struggling right now. So if you were to win that game in a few weeks, and I think they will, that's not that quality of a win. Cal just blasted them 44-7. Okay, so that win's not going to do a whole heck of a lot for you. Well, they've at least got Fresno State, who's fine. Fresno State they've got a pair of Power 4 wins, which is the primary reason they are ranked inside the top 25. They didn't just beat Texas Tech, they housed them, and Texas Tech keeps losing football games that they shouldn't. And Washington was a big win. I mean, the first Apple Cup post-realignment, that was an unbelievable day for Washington State. You're probably going to look back and say it was the highlight of the year to beat Washington in that game, because if the Cougars go 11-1 here, it is not a strong resume without a conference championship. For there to be an at-large opportunity for Washington State, a couple things have to happen. First, you of course have to win the next 4 football games. Secondly, you have to do it in an incredibly convincing fashion. You can't keep having 3-point wins against a team like San Diego State. You've got Utah State, at New Mexico, who's better than you think, at Oregon State, and host Wyoming. They're going to be favored, or at least they should be, in all 4 of those football games. They should win all 4 of those football games. But is this resume going to hold up against just to throw a team out there, for instance, that could be an at-large team, Notre Dame? The answer is no. Because if Notre Dame goes 11-1, Notre Dame will have a loss to Northern Illinois. Yeah, that's pretty bad. But that is negated by a win at Texas A&M, who are currently the only unbeaten team in the SEC. Notre Dame beat them week 1 at Kyle Field. That game right now is among the biggest obstacles Washington State faces to getting themselves in the college football playoff, because they don't have a win that they can look at. You need Texas Tech and Washington, this is the third point, to keep winning. I don't know that they're going to. I don't know what the status of Baron Morton is right now. He left last week's game, and Texas Tech's defense is a disaster. Now, winning that game by 21 points, yeah, that's a good marker there for Washington State. But you beat Washington by 5, who are currently 4-4. And I think Washington can find their way to a bowl game, but what if they lose to USC this week? Suddenly, that's going to become an uphill battle. So, yes, having a couple of Power 4 wins is solid, but the committee's not going to put in 2 at-large teams that are not conference champions. We don't know that for certain. You don't have to take that word as gospel if you're a Washington State fan listening to that and cringing that, wow, we could win 11 football games and not wind up in the playoff. Yep, it stinks. It's not ideal, but you're going to go back to that Boise State game and say, if that fourth quarter had played out differently, this whole situation would be different. Because I think the Broncos would still probably be ranked in the top 25 right now, and Washington State would be unbeaten. And a 12-0 team, yeah, of course that gets into the playoff. I don't think that even with the nature of this particular schedule, I don't think that would be argued. But Notre Dame, if they get it, now if Notre Dame loses, the opportunity opens up. That's what I think has to happen first and foremost before any of the other reasons. Notre Dame has to lose another football game. I really don't think the committee wants to put in 2 at-large, non-Power 4 conference teams that weren't vying for a conference championship this year. That's my suspicion. That is my gut instinct when I try to read the tea leaves as to what's going to happen here in the first season of the 12-team playoff. So Notre Dame has to lose. They still have to go to USC. They still have to play Army. They've got to lose one of those football games. And then you can say, hey, we've got the stronger record. Hey, they're not playing the strongest schedule in the country. Now, Notre Dame's RPI probably at the end of the season going to be a lot higher than Washington State's. But hey, the Cougars would have a better record, and that has mattered before. So that's got to happen. But then you would need a lot of chaos to ensue, particularly in the SEC. Here's the good news. Here is the good news. Chaos is happening. The SEC has a lot of really good teams. They don't have a great dominant team that's going to run away with the conference championship. It's anybody's ball game right now. When you look at teams like Alabama or you look at teams like Ole Miss, both of whom have 2 losses. LSU has got a pair of losses as well. LSU and Bama, one of those teams is going to lose another game. And they might look at a 9-3 LSU or Bama and say, no, we rank them ahead of Washington State. You think they're going to do that with 8-4? They could, maybe. I don't think so. Help is often given to college football teams that hold their own and do what they have to do and control what they can control. You get a lot of chaos in this sport. We're about to enter November. The weather's going to turn in some states. You're going to get plenty of crazy games, and some teams just have to lose because they're going to play each other. So you want to look, if you're Washington State, at teams in the Big Ten like Indiana and say, can you lose some football games, please? Or can Ohio State lose 2 more times? Or can Ole Miss find a way to get to an 8-4 season? Or LSU or Bama? Those are the teams you'd likely be vying with for a college football playoff spot. And I haven't even gotten to the Big 12 just yet. The ACC is looking like it could be a 2-bid league if Clemson and Miami both win 11 regular season college football games. But as of now, the Big 12 would be a 2-bid league if trends continue. So you need at least one of those conferences, the Big 12 or the ACC, to be a 1-bid league where you don't have 2 teams in the regular season win 11 games. Because if that happens and those teams match up in the conference championship, I don't think the committee will punish the loser of a conference championship game. And that is the crappy part about all this realignment and such that would be coming to fruition in one particular moment. But that's just the reality I think Washington State is going to face, is they don't have the opportunity to play for a conference title. And so obviously they can't win one, but they also can't lose one and play in that game. So 11-1 Washington State might have a better record than 11-2 BYU. But BYU would probably have the higher ranking because they've played a tougher schedule at that point. I think you need 2 games record-wise of separation between yourself and any team in the ACC or any team in the Big 12 that isn't getting an automatic at-large bid. So Washington State could make their way into being a chaos team in the college football playoff here, getting themselves inside the top 25, but they don't have a big win remaining on the schedule, so I don't know how high the committee is going to move them up after each win, which is why they have to be dominant, and certainly they'll move up if teams ahead of them lose, usually. But remember, the AP voters currently have Missouri ranked in the top 25 for reasons I cannot comprehend, but I digress. You need a lot of help. A lot would have to go right. Is it a 0% chance? No. It is not. Is it a greater than 10% chance? I also do not believe that that is the case. So Washington State, interesting team to keep their eye on, but unfortunately for those fans up in Pullman, I think you're playing to keep yourself relevant in the college football landscape and showcase the strength of the Pac-12 going forward. They're off to a good start. They're doing their part more than Oregon State right now, who I think are going to have open tryouts like Kenny Dillingham did for kicker. They might be doing that on the defensive line here pretty soon. Hopefully they can get healthy during the bye week. But Washington State, playoff, that's tough. That is really, really hard to foresee. Notre Dame, got to go down. A couple SEC teams need to have 3 or 4 losses. Crazier things have happened, though. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.